Hey, Big fans, welcome back to the Big Bakery. I'm Jacob, and today it's a Saturday evening live stream, whereas usually I do a Friday night live stream. But today I have a wonderful guest down there. That's Julia Chernushevich. Did I say that correctly this time?
Chernushevich, yeah, I give that like a
So close.
9 out of 10.
It's Russian, but Julia is from Canada. Did I say that right? No, isn't it Canadian? Oh, right.
Canada, Canada,
Canada.
yeah.
And she's a guest here today. She's an old friend of mine, and she's a guest here today because she has done a lot of creative stuff in her. There's a lot of creative stuff in her life, and I'd love to hear about it. And I thought you folks out there might be interested as well. So yeah, welcome, Julia. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a while.
It's been a while, but we're going to make up for that now. First of all, you are building something and I'm building something. Would you care to tell the people what you are building?
Yes, yeah. And so I just want to correct, I'm not going to be building it. I'm going to be attempting to build it because multitasking is not my strong suit. And so let me show you. It's this right here. I'm a big fan of all the space stuff. So this is one I haven't actually built before. So I picked it up today just for this.
Wow.
I'm excited to get as far as probably just the base and then finish it all up later.
I feel privileged that you have bought this just for this. Do you have the Saturn V rocket as well?
No, I don't think I have that one yet. I've got Woman of NASA. I've got the ISS. Yeah, I do have a rocket. I have to remember which one it is.
There is only one rocket.
Oh, then
if it's a rocket, at least should be this one. I think I can show you.
Oh, you've got it right there.
I got it right here.
No, not that giant one.
This one. This one? No.
No.
Not that one. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know what rocket you have.
That looks like a lot of work.
Yeah. I did a live stream on that previously, but yeah. Well, all right. Okay. So you're building the lunar lander, which is a celebration of the 1969 landing on the moon, I believe, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin in it. Very interesting. Going to be cool. And I'm building this, the modular book shop, which came out, I think, 2 years ago. 2 years ago at this point, and it's going to be great. This is going to be based on my building, not Julia's building. So we're going to stream for the whole entire first step of this set here, and no matter how far along Julia is, we're going to stop at that point. So let's see how it goes. But first of all, Julia, can you tell us just a bit about yourself and what do you do?
Sure, sounds good. It's a difficult question to answer, but I guess by training, I'm a systems design engineer, which means I like to solve problems, usually problems like that are societal or just like somehow do good for the world. And I bridge mechanical, electrical, and software engineering. So across
some kind of technical superhero.
I think I haven't gotten that badge yet, but I'm like working towards it. Yeah. And yeah, I guess I also solve problems in my free time. I like to go hiking, climbing. Not so big on art, but I do like the creative process.
You do what?
Yeah. I do like the creative process as it applies to like engineering and and in my free time I also built some Battlebots for the television show.
Oh, interesting. We might talk a bit more about that. So engineering. Why?
Why?
Two words. Why?
Well, yeah.
Sorry. Hey, Fortune Farm Combat Robots. Good to see you, and welcome to the stream. Let me know if you have any questions for Julia. But then, Julia, why engineering?
Why engineering? It's a skill I think I've had. I've always liked taking things apart and then building things. So it just seemed pretty trivial. And also I considered briefly being a doctor. And then I went to go volunteer at a hospital. They needed to get my blood. I fainted way too many times to ever be able to be a doctor. Yeah.
Well, that is unfortunate if you want to be a doctor, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
So an engineer it was, and you specialize in
systems design.
Systems design. What systems would that be?
any sort of systems, it's fairly general in that perspective. It's like, let's teach you how to think about a problem, as opposed to let's teach you all the technical skills, because that's stuff I can pick up with the book. And so it very much emphasized, like, think about the human factors, your end users, product development, all that stuff that a lot of people think, oh, it's not important. But funny enough, you can have a brilliant technical solution, but if it's not solving the right problem, it's kind of useless.
Do you have an example of this? Because I have a hard time sort of imagining what that could be.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things I've worked on in the past have been electric vehicles for underground mines. So that was my first job out of university. So imagine like a potash mine, it's a kilometer underground, and you've got to put vehicles in there. And so we were coming up with like, okay, these have to be, well, they have to be vehicles. They have to have no emissions. We were looking electrical for that reason. We're like, they got to be super robust. So it's coming up with like going from understanding the user and what they want to have solved all the way to the technical solution. So,
all right.
Whereas other programs sometimes start with like, hey, here's the tech specs, build me this. We start thinking about asking why we're building it and who is the user, and thinking about some of the more complex aspects.
So basically, some kind of translation process between the
human and the geek.
Yeah, the people making it, making the stuff, and those who are going to use it.
Yeah.
In the end, all right.
That's what I got out of it. Yeah. Some people go on to be doctors and lawyers. It's a pretty diverse program.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's interesting. And hey, Martin K, great to see you, my friend. And welcome to this Saturday evening live stream. I'm talking with Julia, a real Canadian from Canada.
Canada
is the one, actually, and why I'm saying that is I think it's one of the first things I said to Julia when I met her the first time years ago is, so you're from Canada. Of course, that's because of my huge speech impediment that I can't say something like that right. But Julia, you mentioned just briefly that you were on Battlebots. And
that's right.
You're actually famous. You're one of those people you can say you might know her from TV. That's interesting.
You could, yeah. I think we'd have to do a little better, and I'd have to be less camera shy for that to be more true. But yeah, I've competed on the show. I want to say now season 2, 3, 4 years. Yeah.
You've done it for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So tell us a bit about Battlebots and what that's all about.
Sure. Yeah. For those who don't know what Battlebots is, it's a completely pointless but absolutely exhilarating competition where folks from around the world will build 250-pound robots that then go up each other in 3-minute fights. And ideally, you just knock the other robot out. Although sometimes it just happens to be the case that it goes to the judges and they make the decision. But as far as what that looks like, you generally get a call just a few months before the competition starts from the producers who are like, "Hey, we got the green light. Let's go, go, go!" And then you drop everything else going on in your life, and you build a robot. I can get into the details later if that's interesting. But you show up to these days it's Vegas, and then you start competing, and you have 4 fights during which you got to show what your robots got. And then if you make it into the tournaments, you then go on from the top 32 down all the way to fighting in the finals.
Oh, all right. So it's a competition and it's televised, and you build a robot.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no skills in that. How do you, I mean, okay, so first of all, you have to get involved with this program. How did that happen?
Yeah, so it's one of those things that if you're in my sort of like early to mid 30s, probably maybe 40s age range, at least in North America, you very well might have been watching it as a kid and felt inspired by it. So I knew of its existence. And then in 2015, they relaunched it. So whereas it used to be on in 1999, 2000, they're like, hey, we're going to redo this show. And so I was watching season 1 from a, now he's a friend, but at the time, just a person in the city I was in who was into little combat robots. And I was just fascinated. And I think one of the times they're like, hey, apply for season 2. And there was some sort of poster. And I was like, I'm going to apply. I'm going to go do that. And didn't really expect to get in. But I think one thing that we really had going for us was that we're from Canada. And so there you go. Yeah. I wanted to make sure you understand.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. And hey, Doc Sampson, please continue, Julia.
Yeah, so we were applying to Battlebots from Canada. This was actually at the same place I was just telling you about. We built electric vehicles, and so they're not all that different. You got some motors that move the vehicle or the robot forward. You add an extra motor for your big spinning weapon, and it's remote controlled instead of having a steering wheel. But at the end of the day, it's like we build robust vehicles. We could probably build a robust Battlebot. And we applied with a little bit of extra probably than the average team thought put into like our image on TV, and we're Canadian. We had our like plaid, we had our toques, we had like a lot of kind of that that going for us. And so yeah, we ended up making it onto the show and had a robot that the robot operated great. I think some of our team
was that called Bucktooth something?
Bucktooth Burl, yeah.
Bucktooth Burl, yeah.
Yeah, but sadly we made some mistakes just as people that like made the poor decisions that led to us losing some fights, and so we didn't make it into the tournament. Didn't win a single fight that year, but I ended up coming back with some other teams in the future. Red Devil was another team that us as Canadians inherited from someone else. Okay. And then I also went back with a team called Duck. And so I've had experience with a couple of different robots. It's really cool seeing different types of weapons, different drivetrains, things like that.
Okay. So different teams, different robots. Do you have a favorite?
Ooh, that's hard. I think there's a lot of teams that'll do a lot of specific things really well. And so it's hard to pick just one.
No, I mean,
there's teams.
The robot, not necessarily the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's teams that really do some innovative stuff. So I want to say this previous season, I would probably say Blick is a really cool robot. But there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of how can we make these robots more entertaining for the audience, and even in the moment, like you basically know sometimes a day, sometimes 2 days before which opponents you're going to fight, and you have that time to then prepare your robot to put on something that might give you an advantage over the other robot. So sometimes, for instance, you have you're going up against a robot which has a big spinning bar, but you might be able to have something that keeps them away, or maybe it's a bar or like a bar spinning vertically, but you can have like a keep away piece of metal attached to your robot that just makes it so that it can't get close enough to actually hit you. So I don't know, there's just a lot of cool stuff that goes on. Yeah.
So is there a lot of input from the producers on your robots, or is it completely free for all?
I mean, they decide whether you get in or not, but other than that,
you have to produce the robot in advance.
Yes. You have to show up. Yeah. It takes a lot of time, a lot of tens of thousands of dollars. And you have to come with several robots just because one's not going to make it anymore. There's so many fights you have to do that.
It's going to die eventually.
Yes. Yeah.
So the whole design process, the whole construction of the robot is something you do on your own dime?
Yep.
Wow. That's dedication. However, do you get financing for such a venture?
Lucky teams and teams who work hard at it get some financing from sponsors, but a lot of the times you still end up having to pay, especially your first year, you end up paying a good deal of it yourself. But we're folks who do this on our own anyways, without there needing to be a televised event.
All right. So people had already sunk a lot of money into that.
To some extent, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. All right. So getting involved was as a question of applying once they sort of announced that you could get into that. Is there any of the seasons that you where you think you could have made a better result?
There was one particular season, I believe it was season 3, and we were with a robot called Red Devil, which has 2 treads, kind of like tank treads, and then it has the body moves up and down. It has 2 claws that can grab the opponent, and it has a saw that can come right down and it can saw. So I can drive up to your robot, grab you, and then saw.
Okay.
And
sounds evil.
Yeah. It did look, I mean, it's Red Devil. Yeah. I think it was true to its name. Yeah. But I think as far as that season, I think, was one where, as a team, I felt like we did really well. And there was one final fight where there was, I think it was 5 or 6 robots in it, and it was called the Last Chance Rumble.
Okay.
And it's normally your fights are just one-on-one, but this was one of those where they were like, oh, you're already ahead of me.
Yeah,
I'm just holding my first piece.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'll try to catch up.
You're welcome. Sorry to interrupt you. You were talking about how you could have done better.
Yes. I've actually attached 2 pieces together. So
that's good. Yeah. Right along.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything specific, like hindsight. There's a lot of things you could say, but I think there's that one particular fight where you're coming in and there's like 5 opponents, and I think there could have been a little more strategic. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't the one driving. When I tried driving, it didn't go well at all. But I wonder if there's some way that we could have been more strategic to all, kind of team up on the one person that's really strong, get rid of them, and we got damaged. And in fact, the person who damaged us is the person who got to move on, and so maybe be more protective, even letting everyone else fight it out for a second. Okay. So it's a balance of what would you want to do to increase your chances of winning, but then also put on a good show. Because if it was just about winning, sometimes it's important to just kind of play keep away, but nobody wants to watch you running away.
No, that's just boring.
No, they want to see sparks flying. They want to see things like that. So it's hard to say. Yeah.
Okay. So we have an interesting question from Doc Sampson in the chat, and he asks, have you ever built a robot out of Lego?
I've built Battlebots with kids who are excited about Battlebots, but it was the Vex kit. I haven't actually done anything with
what? Vex?
Vex, yeah. So Vex is, I guess, a competitor perhaps to Lego, but they produce Endgame.
All right. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Endgame, yeah. Cool robots. And so they had one of those, and Tombstone was another one. So I've built those 2 just from the kits.
Okay.
And they're pretty cool. You get to like drive around, and it spins the big blade, and you can bash them into each other, and yeah.
Okay.
Pretty fun.
That is pretty cool.
But I've seen other people build Battlebots out of Lego, and I love them. So.
Okay, very cool. So when you started out building a robot, I mean, how did you start that process?
I had a whiteboard. So really, I think one of the difficult things is that the sport's been around for a while, and so people have really figured out what works well. And that's, you put 2 or 4 wheels on a robot, and you take a heavy thing and you spin it really, really fast, and you hit the other robot with it.
Okay.
And so, but if you imagine 60 robots like that wouldn't be very fun.
No.
And so now some of the challenges, like, okay, how do you get on the show? They're not just going to accept another one of those. They've already got some fantastic ones that do a great job. And so part of it is coming up with either thematically what you're going to do, or what's different about your weapon, or anything like that. And so we were supposed to go back with our own robots. Unfortunately, COVID made that a little bit more difficult, and we didn't make it out. But what we were going to do was actually have the robot's name, and the team name was Ferocity, like ferocious, ferocity.
Yeah.
And we were a dragon, and what we had was imagine just a base with 8 wheels, 4 on each side, and these are just your typical drill motors. It's like a brushless drill motor that you can plop in. So pretty cheap, pretty easy to get components. We don't need to order some fancy stuff from overseas. And then on top of that is a giant turret. So it's the entire rest of the robot is its own system that can rotate. There's no wires going up and down. And so this thing has a horizontal weapon on one side, and the other side is a big shield. And so you coming up with us, we're going to put our shield up in front, take whatever hits. And also the fun thing is that oftentimes your weapon is just at the front of your robot, and you have to drive up against the other person. Here, we can drive in this direction, and all of a sudden swing our weapon from the other end and hit someone a little on the side, maybe where they have less protection. Like their wheels might be unprotected, and if we can get that wheel off, immobilize them, KO.
Okay. Well, wow, that's pretty advanced. Did you have 2 separate controls for the upper part and the lower part?
Yeah, entirely. So the batteries were separate. The motor controllers, every part. It was basically 2 robots.
Okay.
And it was kind of cool, actually. We had that with our Red Devil robots, the one with the treads. Each of those treads was individually controlled, and we had a fight where one of them fell off, And the crowd loved it because the robot kept going and fighting here, but that tread had a little mind of its own. The way it was mixed in is that when you go forward or back, or etc., like both of them are going to get those controls, and so it just had its own little life in the corner. And so sometimes you have to effectively have 2 or 3 separate robots like that.
So that seems pretty complicated. Did you control? Were you just one driver, or were you several drivers for those?
It depends on the team's preference. Typically, you have one driver and one weapons driver. I think that's pretty common. You see my ability to multitask. So if I were driving a robot, I'd be driving just one small component of it. Yeah. I'm gonna flip the page now. Yeah.
It's the first page you're flipping.
No comment.
Oh, okay, that's good. So for those of you who just arrived, Julia is building the moon landing set, the celebration of the 1969 moon landing. It's a great set. I actually have it myself. I haven't built it yet, though. She is building that one. And I'm building the bookshop. And we're talking about Battlebots, which Julia was a part of for 4 seasons. And of course, winning everything all the time. No? All right.
No.
How far did you get as sort of as your best result?
It used to be the case that the tournament was a top 16, and so didn't make it to the top 16. We were one fight away from doing that, unfortunately, but never quite made it there. It takes some years to like really iterate on a robot. I mean, some folks come out there and they're like big hitters the first year, but behind the scenes, they've probably been fighting at non-televised events or doing a lot of driving, practicing on their own.
Sure.
Yeah. And a lot of respect for them. Yeah, we, I think with Red Devil, I don't think the original designer of that robot, I would be surprised to hear that he intended for it to win the competition. But man, was it fun to watch, right? Like I said, you got your grabbers, your saw, like it's got a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you can hit and break, but it's fun.
Okay.
And the latest robot I've been on more recently is called Duck, and it's just indestructible. That's its thing. It will always go the full 3 minutes. You can throw it in the air. It can do however many somersaults, jumps, anything like that. And yeah, it'll survive.
That's pretty cool. Not sure I could ever build anything like that. So do you have a workshop where you can do all these kinds of stuff? Or
yeah, I've been in different parts of Canada for all of these experiences, and in one case we were working out of the workshop of our CEO. In another case, we had just one of us happened to have enough space in our home to do it. Other times, like a makerspace. Makerspaces are really cool. Most large cities around the world have them. It's just a place where a bunch of people who want to make something come together, and you can share tools, whether it's like hand or power tools or 3D printers for prototyping, the same version of your robot, but in a miniature. So those have been also really useful.
So and when you say useful, I mean, what tool have you found the most useful while making these?
I think probably have 2 answers, and let me answer. When you're at Battlebots, you have somewhere between a day, 2 days, sometimes just a few hours between fights. And at that point, you just want something that's gonna pull your robot apart, put it back together.
Sure.
I want to say like an angle grinder is just great. You come out and you have these giant holes in your robot where someone bit into it, or like cut it up or whatnot. So you just get all the innards out. You go at it with an angle grinder, clean it all up, make sure things can actually fit back in there again, put them in, and off you go to your next fight. Before that, I think these days, I want to say there's some pretty cool 3D printers out there. So while you might have a 3D printer at home or at your makerspace, library, whatever it is, that prints in like really, I want to say cheap plastic, you also have 3D printers out there these days which can print with some like really cool materials that are actually perhaps not always in a BattleBot, but I have been seeing more and more of them. Continuous fiber, or like carbon fiber or nylon, all these materials that are actually have some structure to them. And people have been using them in their robots for any sort of internal components. So I just think that's really cool. Additive manufacturing is just fascinating.
So 3D printers seems like very important when you do stuff like this. All right.
I think so. At least in the prototyping phase, you can build anything at a small scale, test it out, and then before you commit to tens of thousands of dollars.
I was just about to say, because has there been a point where you sort of, you could buy a certain bit, piece, motor, whatever it is, but you actually ended up making it yourself because it was easier, faster, cheaper. Was there such a point?
So we still buy a lot of things off the shelf. So we will source them. So for instance, if you're looking to purchase a brushless motor, there's a lot of them out there that are used for electric skateboards.
A brushless?
Brushless, yeah. So your old style motor that you would have in a drill, for instance, if your drill is a little bit older, it's going to have actual contacts that as the drill spins, they're going to change whether they're touching the positive side or the negative side. And so they will, over time, right, they're spinning, they're trying to contact, they will have a little bit of wear and tear. They're also just bulkier. Generally speaking, brushed motors are bigger. But they're easier to control. They're just, you give it the positive, you give it the negative, and the thing as it spins is going to change which way it goes, and that'll change how it wants to spin.
So it doesn't have any gears or anything, it's just forwards and backwards, and that's it.
Yeah, you might have gears, but there's no fancy electronics. And so brushless, on the contrary, you are going to have a fancy controller, which is going to change the polarity. You're going to have magnets in there, and you're going to have coils. And the coils will produce like a magnetic force as well. And if you take a bunch of coils and you change, like let's say you have, this is a magnet and this is north, the tip of my finger. If I have this coil producing south, and then I change that the next coil is producing south, this is going to want to move. Then I energize the next coil to be south. And so you can control that motor really, really fast if you change which coil is which, to then be able to spin. And so brushless motors don't have any parts that are touching. There's a little tiny air gap there. And so they got less friction. You can also pack them in a lot tighter. So you have like a brush motor that's about this size, your brushless would be smaller to have the same power output.
All right. Seems to me, and this is just sort of my personal logics, that it would have a tendency to break down less because there's no parts touching. All right, okay. That seems smart for such an event as a Battlebot thing.
Yes,
Martin K, sorry to interrupt, but Martin K has said something here. It sounds incredible. He saw Robot Wars some 20 years ago. 20 years ago, but he didn't know it was still a thing. Not Robot Wars, but the concept in general is still a thing. I remember. I think actually when I asked you about coming on, I on here, I called it Robot Wars as well.
Yes, because the Europeans are more familiar, I think, with Robot Wars.
Yeah, and then Battlebots. That's true. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to check my notes because I have notes.
I'm almost going to turn the page again.
So when you sort of approach a new project, do you mentioned a whiteboard, but do you ever just have an idea and just punch it out in some way? Just go with the flow, flying at the seat of your pants, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I should do more of that.
Okay.
That's my answer. I think I tend to overthink things from the start, and I think it'd be really good to really get like one iteration of an idea out there and see if it works.
Yeah.
I think the best way to learn if something's a good idea or to learn if it works is just to go do it. And I don't think it needs to be some complicated, fancy version. Like I was saying, use a small robot to test the idea. A good example of a team that did that actually was a team that had, imagine like a normal robot would be like, I don't know, a lot of robot and little wheels. This team decided to have a little bit of robot and giant wheels. They're like as tall as I, or almost as tall as I am. And so their name's huge. And they tested that robot out on the small scale. And so they have, you can see when you go to an event, they have like a little version, slightly larger version, medium version, and then one that's about that tall.
Okay.
And so it's really cool. It's like, yeah, great. You guys did a great job. You did all your iterations. I think I need to do more of that. I think maybe one example I'm working on right now is I have, my parents have 2 cats. And one of those cats is very fat because
is this gonna involve
electronics?
Hurting a cat? Okay.
Just emotionally, perhaps, yeah.
All right. Okay. But he's very fast.
So So one cat is a grazer. He will eat whenever he feels like eating, perhaps 2 little pieces of kibble. And
Yeah.
then the other cat is recently adopted from the streets, or rescued from the streets, and she will eat anything.
Okay.
Any sort of, she'll eat Havarti cheese, she loves that. She'll eat cutlets, you name it, she'll eat it. And so the problem is she eats all his food. And so right now I'm coming up with a solution where originally I was going to use computer vision, but then a local friend suggested I just have a weight, like a weighing platform, like a scale.
Yeah, sure.
And if the cat comes on there and the cat happens to be the weight of the very big eater, then the cat food dish is just going to close up and say, nah, you don't get any more. But if it's the grazer who's been losing weight over the last, I want to say, year at this point, then for him, the cat just stays open and he actually gets to eat.
Okay.
And so I think I've been thinking about this idea for too long. I have to build it because I've been like sourcing components and thinking about how to write the code and how to make it so that it could even be expanded into a product. And at the end of the day, my user, the cat, might not even be willing to step onto it because it's scary.
But do we agree that didn't need to be an electrical or digital solution? That could be a purely mechanical solution where you, with counterweights, could have the weight and something open up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you could tell I'm more of an electrical software engineer, I guess, just by.
No, but I don't know. I'm not much of an engineer myself, but I'm just thinking the whole weighing down. You have plenty of momentum for opening and closing, and if you just put in some kind of pin or something in your weight, it'll go down to a certain point when the weight is heavy and not so heavy. Then it'll that could work. I don't know if it would be not sure it would be as simple as what you're doing with electronics, but probably easier to repair.
Depends. Yeah, I think so.
Of course, you could do it very complicated as well. So, and we have Trudy Briggs says regards from Italy. Hello, Trudy Briggs, and welcome. I'm talking to Julia, who was on Battlebots, and we're talking about robots and design. And Julia is talking about telling us about a very fancy cat feeding mechanism. And we're also talking about sort of designing things as you go, or sort of prototyping and thinking a lot about it before you do it. So you think this is an example of where you should have done it already, because the cat might not agree to this?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you want to get your product out in front of a user as fast as possible. In this case, my user is a cat, and if that cat, who's already super picky, is like, no way am I going near that thing, it doesn't matter how perfect I make the electronics or whatever the mechanism is. So I think in general, maybe less whiteboarding and more just get down to business and build it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. It's an interesting consideration, considering the end user as well, and not having put it in front of the end user. I recognize that process myself a bit, because when I write something, you really have to push for that first draft to sort of get something going. So I do recognize the idea of thinking about it too much and not writing anything. But then again, you can actually sometimes, get into a point where you haven't thought enough, and then nothing will sort of turn up on the page. No design will appear because you haven't thought anything. You just sat down and said, I'll begin to build, I'll begin to work now, and then nothing materializes because you haven't given it any thought. So there's a balance to be found, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Here's my progress so far.
You made a square.
It's a rectangle. Gosh.
That's because in Danish, firkant is both a rectangle and a square, so that's why I'm calling it a square. So I'm sorry, but the rectangle, you're correct. And did you find it hard to build this rectangle?
No. Well, the multitasking is difficult. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let me just.
If you don't believe that I can build Battlebots, I don't even blame you, based on my ability to pump things out here. Yeah.
What kind of when you start a new Battlebot, what's most important in your sort of creative process?
I mean, I was touching upon it earlier, but coming up with a way to stand out from the crowd. So what is going to make you unique, but at the same time still make you competitive? So it's difficult to find that balance sometimes. But as far as what you're thinking about is, okay, what sort of weapon do I want? So you can have a weapon that spins up. And so generally speaking, let's say you're like a vertical spinner. So you have a big, whether it's like a disc or a drum, but you're going to want it to spin up so that when you hit an opponent, they go flying and you get pushed up like down against the ground. If you're thinking about going a different route, you can be a horizontal spinner. The difficulty there is that when you hit somebody, you also go flying, right? So it's really just who's got the most friction, who's going to stay attached to the ground. And then what else can you have? You can have saws. You can have flamethrowers are really cool, though they are a little bit limited. But you can come up with any sort of weapon you want. There's flippers. The one I was talking about, blip, takes energy that is stored in a flywheel and then translates it to create a giant flip. So the world's sort of your oyster, but I find it's easier sometimes to come up with ideas if you constrain yourself. And you don't have to limit yourself to those constraints forever. But if you're just thinking, where do I start? Put some artificial constraints on there and then figure out, okay, if I were building this, what approach would I take? And then put a different constraint on and then try to build something else and say, okay, I want to use maybe this cool technology. How do I integrate it in?
Yeah, I think there's that's a good point. Trying to limit yourself, because I find that when you sit down and say, okay, you can do anything, just do anything. It's probably the most annoyingly irritating way of approaching anything, because you can't come up with anything. It's just, but what am I doing? I was when I consider building stuff for my Lego city, there's always there is a research phase at least. I want to build a post office. Okay, I go looking at pictures of post offices, because any ideas, but if I don't have the idea of a post office, but just I want to build something, it usually goes wrong. I have actually once tried to sit down and make a video based on that premise, that I wouldn't think of anything in advance. And it is probably the ugliest thing I ever came up with, because I hadn't thought anything. So it didn't matter, so to speak. It was just annoying.
No, I agree. The research phase is important to know what's out there. Sometimes you're watching the show and you're just counting how many times somebody went out of the fight in a certain way, or you might be looking at the ways that people protect their wheels or don't protect their wheels. Or one really important thing is like the ground game. Maybe I'll take my Lego progress right now, and it's basically, if you have wedges at the front of your robot, it's who is going to get under the other person to then be able to shoot them up. And so whether yours is attached, whether it's on a little mechanism that allows it to move around, change its angle, it's called like a wedgelet. It's basically just on a hinge at the back. So different ways people will try to win that ground game, so that they're always the one delivering the hits or staying at the bottom and not being pushed up in the air.
All right.
So research. You got to do research. To
show this. I like this. This is sort of a desk with a till on it and some books, and I like the details they've done in here. It's very neat. Very nice. Very nice indeed. Yeah. So I'm just trying to do this. So I'm also bad at multitasking, actually.
Oh, okay.
So don't worry if you feel the pressure. Have you ever, with your Battlebots, have you ever been at a place where you thought, this challenge or this problem we can't figure out?
Usually that comes down to the weight. So you are limited in 250 pounds for everything.
250 pounds. All right, yeah.
Yeah, you can add a little bit of weight that's decorative, as long as the team you're fighting agrees with it. So some robots have like cool plates that fall off. It's a robot called Shatter, and it kind of like its outer armor shatters all over, and that's makes a cool effect. But generally speaking, 250 pounds is actually really constraining. You're trying to fit your armor and a weapon in there and your whole drive system. And so I think that some of the creativity comes from, okay, well, I was going to use these components, and before I even add the armor, it just doesn't work. So I think creativity comes maybe even from like the materials you sometimes use. I've seen the robot I was on recently, Duck. It's built out of magnesium now, and it's lighter.
And, okay, yeah, sure,
yeah. But yeah, there's ways where I don't know if there's a specific challenge that comes to mind.
No.
Ways, I think a challenge we had was how to attach. I was mentioning earlier, we had a robot that came out of 2 parts. And so how to attach that top turret to the bottom of the robot, the drivetrain, in that base. And the difficulty of, you want to be able to turn it so that you're facing the right way and able to deliver a hit. But at the same time, you want a mechanism that if you get hit, it's not just going to shear off and break. And so it's sort of like a clutch, or just the ability to take a hit and not damage what drives that system. And so that was every team member contributing whatever thoughts they could come up with as far as, okay, how do we drive that? Okay. But I think teamwork, like I find if I work alone in isolation, I only come up with so many solutions, because I'll run into a problem and feel like it's just unresolvable. But if I'm working with a team, I might say something and they'll be like, oh, well, you can solve it this other way I've seen. Or even just saying it out loud. Like there's something in software development is rubber ducky. Often people will have a rubber ducky. I have a beaver, but it's just a little plush toy you explain things to. Yeah. And most of the time, as you explain it, you realize exactly what the problem is and you come up with a solution.
Yeah. I usually talk to myself.
Okay.
The effect is the same, but if the one seems more insane than the other, I'll let the viewers decide.
I didn't say
one.
it.
No. I'll let the viewers decide which one is more insane. But I do know the effect of speaking out loud. You know, it does wonders for your sort of managing situations, which has maybe if a situation has been difficult to get a grip of, or a problem is difficult to handle in some way. You know, speaking out loud is helpful, I find. So I get the rubber ducking. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Better name than talking to yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I see Mama's Bricks has turned up. Hello, Mama's Bricks. Great to see you. Hope you're doing great. I'm talking to Julia, who was on Battlebots, which is a robot fighting television program, which is still going strong, I believe. And Julia was in 4 seasons of that, and she's telling us a bit about robots and how she makes them and all that. So yeah, and we've been chatting for a while already. How is it going with your building? Is it starting to look like a lunar lander, or?
You talking to me? It's still just a platform. I'm still working on it. Just on bag number 1 so far.
Okay, that's good.
I'll catch up. It's okay.
Yeah, you'll catch up.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll catch up. I know, Canadian jokes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, did you learn anything from participating in Battlebots? Did you?
I think we learned all of that, like non-technical stuff are the things I didn't come to mind perhaps going into Battlebots, but there were times when conflict resolution was probably one of the reasons we lost a match. Okay. Funny enough. Other times you really want to label what components you have, such that you take the weapon that you've actually put through a hardening process as opposed to one that you didn't, and it's just a bunch of soft metal, so that you use the right one so it doesn't fall apart on the first hit and the judges say they never saw it moving. Okay. So important things like that.
Anything you sort of take with you, technical wise, creativity wise?
Yeah.
Silence.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I have created silence.
Anything that I've taken away. I mean, I want to say inspiration from all the ways that people design things differently.
Sure.
And that you can give everyone the same components, you're going to come up with different ideas out of it. But
Sure.
yeah, as far as things I've taken away, everything you're building there has to be very, I want to say, like, maintainable, because it's your design that really matters and how well you built your robot. But at the end of the day, you have to rebuild it between every single match. So there's 4 matches to get into the tournament of 32, and then you've got a lot of matches after that to get it to the finals if you're going that far. And you can't just design something that's perfect in terms of its ability to deliver damage or take damage. It's like you have to be able to maintain it. And so you have to be very conscious about where you put things, how you're going to pull things out when they break. So very commonly you will have a motor or a motor controller that needs to be repaired. Sometimes your entire frame. I think I was saying earlier with the angle grinder, you'll have like just people have taken bites, or the robots have taken bites out of yours, and you have to strip everything out and then put it all back together very quickly. And so designing for that, for the maintainability, has been really interesting, because I think it helped me become a better engineer, because I think about how it's used and how you'll maintain it over time. Yeah. How that translates. Sorry, I was going to say how it translates into Lego. I don't know.
No. Well, the designing for sort of being able to take things apart and putting them back together on purpose, the whole modular thought, it's very applicable to Lego, especially when you do larger layouts and such. There's something to be said for, if you have a big city, for instance, or just a big layout, you can't build everything in one big plate. You have to make it modular in some sense. You have to be able to change things, and the fun part about Lego is that you can always just refit something, always rebuild something. So having that modular idea sort of go through whatever you do is, I think, indispensable in actually working with this, because if you can also always take out a part to redesign it and then put it in a new part without having to take everything else apart, that's sort of a key thing in doing great Lego work, I think.
And there's actually even more of that in Battlebots, where you're going to change what your robot looks like, depends on who you're fighting. If you're fighting a big hammer, you're going to want to have a really tough top armor such that they can't break through it and damage your internals. At the same time, you might have a plastic armor if you're going up against someone who's just got a weapon at the front of their robot and they're going to attack you from the sides. And then you might want different attachments. That we've had aluminum and steel and plastic and magnesium, all as different identical components for the identical part of the robot, but shaped differently, or like I said, the different just materials depending on who you want to fight. And so you're mixing and matching. I think similar to how I would when I was playing Lego as a kid, at least, that I would mix and match what I think makes the best application for that particular problem.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. All right. Well, Mama Strix is saying that it's interesting what you're saying. That's good. And she'll listen for a bit while she's packing. The last thing is for a holiday to Denmark. Mama Strix is going to Denmark. Maybe she's going to Legoland or Lego House. Have you actually managed to be at Legoland in is there a Legoland in Canada? Canada.
I believe there is, and I have not been there. No.
Have you been to a Legoland?
I don't believe so. No, I haven't. I have to say, my travels. I've been to Disney.
Heresy, blasphemy. Your travels went to Disney.
No, I said like even places like Disney. I've only been to, I want to say, by accident, because of a Battlebots team that took me there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not so frequently going to those places myself. More of like a backcountry camper.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you ever get to Denmark, I can definitely recommend you going to the Lego House. It's a great place. Yeah, Lego House. It's a new sort of place that Lego has built It's much more sort of much more. You are doing stuff, building stuff.
Oh, okay.
So
that's cool.
It is interesting. There's a very interesting section where you have to build small cars that can sort of jump, and you have to make them be able to jump through a hoop. And there's a lot of going back and forth between these big bins with Lego in them and wheels and everything, and you can make them heavier or lighter or more aerodynamic or less aerodynamic or whatever you want to do.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, and there's also a racing thing that goes on there as well. So there are interesting possibilities there. It's also very kid friendly. So but.
I help organize a couple maker fairs. I just finished volunteering at one, and I think that would be a cool event. We have these it's kind of a common maker fair thing, but you have drag. You have belt sander drag racing, where if you imagine just having a belt sander and you just have two of them side by side, you push the button when the light goes on, and whichever one gets there first. So we have everything from activities like that down to getting kids to make their own molds of a little robot or paper airplanes, things like that. But I feel like that what you just described with the Lego cars, customizing them, it would be really cool.
And I will say this, that for a maker fair, not having Lego there seems kind of a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, so some of the maker fairs are bigger, and I only ever see the robot section.
Okay,
but even
so
that, you could have
Lego there.
Yeah. I think there's Lego. Yeah.
And I'm not a wasted opportunity by you. I mean, a wasted opportunity on behalf of Lego, the company. Not getting into that is just that would be crazy if they're not doing that. Whoops! I lost the brick.
Oh no! Here, you can have one of mine.
Thank you. Just give me a sec. Say something interesting in 2 minutes.
Something interesting in 2 minutes. So I mean, as far as I think cool ways that I've been trying to think, I'm like, if you ask me how I would use Lego and interface it into things, I was wondering about 3D printing Lego blocks or something similar that can interface to it, or even using molds and having some cool custom Lego plus other materials construction. So I don't necessarily know what I would do with it, but I've seen some cool desk pieces. Even at my last job, we actually got Lego bricks for certain awards and successes. So I had a Lego brick for being part of the diversity team. I had a Lego brick for being part of something else. And so I was like, I could build some sort of cool contraption that uses Lego at its core to showcase some of the other manufacturing techniques.
Interesting.
It'll be fun. You find your brick?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for holding down the fort. What I was thinking is 3D printing Lego parts. I think you're entering.
Dangerous.
Not necessarily. That's not what I'm about to say. I know the copyright, trademarks, blah 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 blah. Probably a problem if you go off selling them. But if you 3D print one in your own basement using in your own models, you're probably going to be okay. And that's not legal advice, by the way. Just for everyone watching this. I was thinking that there's different schools of thoughts within the should you be making your own parts, Lego parts, and there is a market for instance, train tracks. The thing is, Lego has made trains for years, but for I think maybe the last 20 or 30 years, the tracks has been very limited to an eighth of a turn and a straight one. Switch track. So you don't have to have 4 pieces to make a quarter of a circle, and 16 to make a full circle, and you can do straight ones and have two switch tracks to make one. What do you call that? A switch track. And that's about it. So in the olden days, you could get crosses where the tracks would cross, So you can make a figure eight, for instance, and they will go over and other things like that. For instance, if you want a softer curve or a harder curve or something like that, you're very limited. So there is a market for people who 3D print, and I believe also sell some of this. I don't know how Lego is reacting to that in the long run, but there is such a market. So it's not totally unheard of. But sorry?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just love to see kids in general and people in general being more in control and just not necessarily consumers of all the other products that are out there. And so I think Lego has that mindset when it comes to like buy the bricks and build whatever you want. But I feel like, even taking it a step further and saying, like create anything you want to interface with it. Whereas if I want to go to whether it's a makerspace or any sort of like, some businesses do it, but I can get a scan of myself and then just 3D print it on the spot and make a whole little army of Julias and be terrifying. But I could do that and they could have the little Lego interface at the bottom, or creating your own entire piece of art and then printing it, molding it.
There was actually there's also a discussion within the Lego community of quote unquote illegal techniques. So, for instance, doing this, I don't know if you can see that. I've attached a brick would at some point have been considered an illegal technique, where Lego seems to be going more and more, on the if it works, it's legal. But for some time, this was considered an illegal technique, and that's because it'll make a small dent in your brick. Because so the dimension isn't sort of fully there, so to speak. So it will damage, sort of likely damage the bricks. But so in that way, people being in control certainly is important. And having the idea of illegal techniques sort of lessens the idea of being in control, because something is quote unquote legal. So it's very, very interesting. Sorry, I'm trying to get something to put on straight. One by ones are usually not very easy to get on straight. There we go.
Yeah.
So
I would like to point out that I am now I have no more gaps. It is a square.
Oh,
look at that.
So it's the base.
It's almost done. Yeah, making progress. Page
Wonderful.
60. I'm not going to say how many of those pages were the history of the the lunar lander, but
if I'm not mistaken, I'm guessing you are on page 15, building wise.
Maybe. I won't count them.
No. All right. So, do you find there's anything that'll fuel your creativity? Something that'll, always get you going?
I actually think I find that I knew too much about reality, and hearing from kids comes up with some pretty cool solutions where they're like, "Can you do this?" And you want to say, "No, absolutely. Actually, you know what? I probably could if I applied this one method in a totally different way." Or so I do I almost want to say like the opposite of what I was saying earlier is when you want to add constraints, but maybe even talking to somebody who knows nothing about the space, who's not influenced by all of the different ways that things are traditionally done. I think that fuels some of the creativity. Other than that, I probably default to some of those kind of weird techniques that I've learned. I used to work in R&D at General Motors. I did an internship there, and they taught me, I forget the name of it, but they basically come up with a word, let's say like butterfly, and then you list off over a period of 30 seconds or 60 seconds all the words that relate to that word. So butterfly, you could say flower, wing, etc. And then when you're done, you then come back to whatever it is you're actually trying to solve. In that case, we were building like infotainment systems for vehicles, and we think of all the different ways that we can connect back those words to what we're building and use that to drive some sort of creative or innovative process. So I'll rely on like odd techniques like that, but it sometimes works. You kind of, it really gets you outside of what you would normally think about. So I think in that sense, it's successful.
It's sort of a mind mapping exercise, something like that.
Yeah, it's trying to then figure out how to apply those things to the problem at hand, things you would never have thought of originally.
Yeah, it seems very spacey. At least I have a hard time sort of.
Spacey can be good sometimes. I think it depends what you're doing. If you're just trying to solve a very specific problem, then probably the constraints need to be helpful. But if you're asking me to, I don't know, come up with the next most brilliant dog toy, me thinking about if I were a dog, what would I want, is going to be probably not super effective. But something like this might be more fun. Come up with ideas that haven't been out there before. I think when it comes to like understanding a problem, I find I like to ask why a lot of times to get at the root cause of a problem. So if it's creativity as far as actually solving, sorry, I dropped a piece, as actually solving.
Sorry. It's happened to us all.
Yeah. I won't admit the fact that I just made a big mistake here. Put something in the wrong place.
It's always good to admit that you're not admitting the fact. So yeah, makes sense. So
do you have any suggestions of your own for that one?
For which one?
For just another mistake. For
making mistakes. Oh, I have plenty.
For making for creativity.
For how if I do anything, if anything fuels my creativity, it's interesting that I can not even remember my own question, isn't it? Something fuels my creativity. I think. As I told, I don't know. Did I say this on stream, or was that before we came online? I've published 2 short stories, science fiction short stories, and one of the exercises I've tried to use there is take a known text, another short story which has already been written by someone else, and then first typing it, precisely word by word, either on a typewriter or computer, and once you've done that, you take the text that you've just typed, and you have it next to you, and you start typing it again, but then start to add stuff or subtract stuff or rewrite stuff, and do that process 2 or 3 times, and then in the end you usually come up with something very original that has very, very little to do with the original text, but to start to get going, sort of to just start off at some point somewhere. That sort of that helps at least. I'm not sure I haven't written anything. I have actually written a very, very short story at some point based on that, but nothing that has been published. But that exercise that does fuel my creativity. I think there we go. I'm putting in stairs. That's good.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'd probably say also just running into problems helps fuel my creativity, as far as I'll come up with something and I'm like, I wish there was a better way to do this. And then sometimes I actually pursue it and try to implement it. Probably one recent example is I think I mentioned I like backcountry camping.
Yeah.
And my friends and I went, and it's the kind of camping where you have a reservation for a zone or a lake, but a certain area, and then you go around and you try to find a campsite. And we kept dropping by campsites that were just not a good fit. They were buggy or swampy or tiny or on a big slant, and we're like, I wish we knew.
Yeah.
And so now we're starting to build a community where people can upload this information into a site, and then that way, not only do you know about those campsites, but you also have the conditions of the trail or the canoe route or the campsite, so you know ahead of time. It's like, oh, there's tons of snow, I better bring maybe a shovel and perhaps my ice cleats, things like that. Yeah, so sometimes I just feel like running into a problem and being like, I can't be the first person who ran into this problem. Why hasn't it been solved? And okay, and all right, if there's not a good reason, and then perhaps it's something I'll give a shot.
Yeah, all right, that's pretty cool. Do you have any people or I don't know, books or anything that's your sort of a person you're very inspired by, or?
I want to say the book by Adam Savage, Every Tool's a Hammer. I found really great. I listened to it all actually while I was in a makerspace. We were laser cutting masks at the start of COVID, and it was just fun to like listen to it while doing something that's very makey. And I just love makey. Yeah.
Is that's a verb now? Or what?
Yes, I've made. I mean, I'm sure not the first one to make it up, but it made sense.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I loved hearing his experiences because he has. I mean, through the stuff he's done on Discovery Channel and on his own, there's a lot to be inspired by. But also, I think some of the things he talked about of like keep your space clean and get down and build something and don't spend too much time in that design process. And if you think you don't know how to do something, just go start doing it. And especially if you've got a good community of people around you, you can always reach out for help and learn more. And so I just found his book really inspiring. It's not one of those books where you come out and you're like, oh, let me take notes. It's just like, man, I can do this. This is actionable.
Yeah, sure. Well, he is definitely a seat of your pants maker type. It's not much that goes into the design process with him. He has that tested channel on YouTube, and I've seen some of his. They call them one-day builds, but usually they're actually more than one day. That's fine. but when you watch that, he does very much just at the seat of his pants.
Yeah,
a little hectic once in a while, but very, very, very inspirational, I think. So Adam Savage is one of the people you would sort of refer to as an inspiration. Is there any other?
I want to think. None that come to mind as far as books right now. I've been reading a lot of books, but they've been on different topics. Could I mention a YouTuber?
Yeah, sure. Anything. I just mentioned books as an example.
Stuff Made Here is a really cool YouTube channel.
Stuff Made Here.
Yeah, he's kind of a nerdy, geeky guy, and she at some point had a robot that cut his hair for him. He's also come up with some like whether you're throwing a basketball, it's basically created a couple different, I think he's on like iteration number 3 hoops that will just never miss.
That's nice.
The first one, it was just like shaped in a specific way that no matter where on the backboard, it'll always get the ball in. The next one started to move around a 2-dimensional wall, and this one now moves in 3 dimensions. So you could just throw it like that and it'll always get in. So they're not necessarily like problems that need solving, but he has really great applications of technology, and he talks about how he like iterated and failed and tried something new and then failed and tried something new. And I was like, yeah, I love this. I love that you're telling me about all these things. But he is the far other side of Adam Savage's one-day builds. His is like, I just spent like 4 months of my life on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's what was I gonna say? I forgot completely. Do you know that when you have a great idea and it's sudden? I woke the other night. I woke up, I think at around 3, and I had this weird dream. My first thought was this would make a great book. The last thing I thought was I can remember that in the morning.
Oh no.
Never do that. I mean,
no.
I now know that my great novel is lost in the sort of in
Can you recreate the same environment you were in, drink the same drink before bed?
Yeah, all that. But never ever. That's a word to the wise, I think. And never ever say to yourself in the middle of night, "Oh, I can remember that."
I'll remember that. Yeah.
But you can't.
No.
It's just not possible. So yeah, never ever. Have you ever had a dream where you came up with a solution?
I want to say there's been times I just didn't sleep that night and I came up with a solution, but I don't think in the dream. No, I think my dreams are more like Wild West cowboy style dreams.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, can't say that. Or maybe I just don't remember. Maybe I do it every night, and like you said, don't write it down. Yeah.
I've cured cancer several times, but I don't remember the recipe. Sorry. Yeah. I'm really bad at writing stuff down. So
I have really bad memory, so I have sticky notes all over the wall here with various ideas. I rely on things like that to get me through.
But that's interesting because a guy like for instance Stephen King, he resents the idea of a notebook. He will never ever use a notebook because his point is that if it's a good idea, it'll stick around with you.
Yeah, that's the privilege of having a good memory.
Yeah, I was thinking something like that, and maybe if you've been writing for several years, you have trained your brain to remember good stuff, whereas if you're just starting out in whatever you're doing, remembering what's important and what's not, you're trying to remember everything because everything seems important. So yeah.
That's true.
I've done something wrong. How is that even possible?
I've got 3 pieces left over. That's fine, right?
If it's 1x1s,
yes, they are. Yeah,
they are usually extras.
Perfect.
That's something worth knowing when you're building Lego. That if you've got 1x1s left over at the end, there's probably it's just there as extras. If it's more than 1x1s, say something that's 1x2, for instance, you've forgotten something. Definitely. Okay. You could have forgotten something if you could have forgotten something with a 1x1, but it's not very usual.
Okay, well then I'm done my base.
Oh my god, it's a moon base. You get it? Moon base. I think that was funny. Why aren't you laughing? Oh.
I like your stairs. Those are cool stairs.
They're very cool stairs, yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't come up with those.
But you're executing great.
Thank you very much. You're so kind. What?
You sent me some of these questions ahead of time, so I'm trying to get ahead.
I can't hear anything you're saying because you're crinkling, but that's fine. Just crinkle. Just get done crinkling.
I'm done crinkling. Okay.
And that's another thing when you do Lego YouTubing is you discover how much noise is in those crinkly bags.
I gotta say at the start though, I had everything. My bag number 1 was decrinkled going in, and you were crinkling. So
yeah, I was crinkling. Yeah, but that's me. It's completely different when it's me.
When it's okay, I see. Yeah.
No, but what you were doing is called knolling, like a knoll, Knoll.
Okay.
Small knoll. So when you're sort of lining everything up, and having small piles of one type of bricks in one pile, that's called knolling. It's a very effective way of building because you know where everything is. Also, I think there's a debate whether or not it's quicker because you're also using time knolling.
Yes.
If you just start building, you might be quicker. I see Bricks has turned up. Good day, Jacob. Bookshop builds. Woohoo! Yes, that's true. I'm building the Bookshop, and Julia is here too. She's building a lunar lander, which she's showing us now. Ooh, it's a creator expert set. Julia is a famous person who has been on television. She has built robots on television and won tremendous prizes and gotten well known all over the world for her robot building prowess. And she's regaling us with tales of her robot building adventures. Indeed, she is. Is there one situation, one idea? Oh, Brooksby says, hello, Julia. So,
hi.
Is there one experience from your time at Battlebots which sticks out that you would care to share with us?
Yeah. I love that you are in there during your 3-minute battle, and you and your opponent have nothing else on their minds other than wanting to destroy the other person's robot. And you know that they poured like hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of hours into their robots, and so much money, and then you destroy it. And you think everyone's going to be super upset, but no, you get back into the pits and you walk over and you're like, hey, I'm so sorry. That was a great fight. What can I do to help you rebuild? Generally speaking, one robot will be more beat up than the other. And so, you work with people, you figure out, okay, who's got the right tools, because you come with everything you think you need, and then you get damage you never anticipated in your dreams. You're thinking, great, how do I pull these pieces apart? How do I make them stick again? So whatever it is, you're thinking, okay, how can I use the collective knowledge of the folks here, and sometimes even the collective parts, to help myself get back together. So there's sometimes conflict that happens, but most of the time it's a really great environment, and I love that.
So some helpfulness. Yeah.
Yeah, and then how to approach a problem, because you're all running into similar problems as you compete.
So is that how it is? That people usually have some of the same problems?
I mean, you're smashing heavy things together. A lot of the times the internals are fairly common as to the components you're using. So whether it's, hey, I can't get this out. Like, I think I spent an hour and a half this past season just trying to get at one particular screw out. And I tried every idea in the book, and then every idea that everyone who passed by and noticed that I'm still doing that same one thing suggested, down to whatever it may be. You might need new wheels at that moment. Ideally not, because a lot of these folks have custom made wheels. You might need to fill a giant gap in your robot, and so sometimes you can go over to the welders. Battlebots actually provides some welding support, and you can say, hey, can you help me out with this? And sometimes you're like, great, you know what, I need to find a new supplier in the city who is not only going to provide the material, but also is going to laser cut it or water jet, whatever it is. And so we'll share the resources for where you can go to find these things, or help each other out. Yeah.
Okay. Seems like a good community. I mean,
it's got its issues, but it has a lot of ups as well, positives too.
Also ups, not just downs.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to pull out my notes once again. I do have notes. What creative projects do you have planned for the future?
Well, I told you about the cat one I'm working on. That didn't take very long. And then really it's growing this backcountry camping idea. So right now we're recruiting ambassadors who are hopefully going to record some of their thoughts from their trips and help us build a community of folks who want to support each other going backcountry camping. Other than that, there's something I'd like to get into. There's no plans to do right now, but there's this really cool community of people who's similar to Battlebots, but it's cheaper, I want to say, and healthier in that you get a little more than just a few months heads up for it to happen. But that it's called Power Wheels Racing. So I don't know if you know. Yeah, they're like little cars that you might give to like let's say a 8-year-old kid, and they'll drive it around the neighborhood on the sidewalk. And it just looks like, a Jeep, but it's tiny and it's made out of plastic. And so this community takes those as sort of the basic building block and then builds cool cars that they then race at maker fairs or these specific events. And so I'd love to get into that because it's constrained financially. You can't, Battlebots, you'll have a robot cost $3,000 go up against a robot that costs $50,000. And, there's some advantage to one of those.
That's a lot of money.
One. Yeah. And that's not the most expensive. That's yeah. But with Power Wheels, you're limited in money. You build it yourself. You don't need any fancy special water jet cutters. You don't need to like outsource it to a big shop. You just build it yourself in your garage, and then you race it around and have fun. And what people do is they'll build cool versions of this where, for instance, one person's looks like a hot dog. and you are literally riding a giant hot dog as you race.
So are you going to get in the car?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on RC.
Whatever. No. This is a kid's car. So
okay.
Imagine yourself in like fetal position, just barely fitting into the Some people do like Star Trek Enterprise, and you're riding on top of it. Depends how much you want to contort your body during this.
So is there a league or anything?
Yeah. So these happen. It's called Power Wheels Racing. There's a whole community on Facebook, I believe, and events that happen around North America. Some of them in the snow, most of them in the summer. But it's just kind of a cool problem of like, not only do I have to, like, there's different ways to win. So you could be most, I don't know the full details, but you could be something like most decorative or creative or fastest, or like a really long endurance race, things like that. And so there's just so many cool ways to apply both your engineering or making or creative processes to it. So yeah, I'd love to get into that.
And what's stopping you?
Probably need to stop traveling every few weeks. I think would help, and actually get settled somewhere with a garage, or just somewhere space. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, workspace. Isn't it always the problem, having the space for your hobby? I know everything about that.
Oh, whatever hobby you have, you never have enough. It's always like the N+1 rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like when you get a house.
Yes. Yeah.
The amount
I know
of
that.
space you have is sort of exponentially tied to the amount of crap you accumulate. Yeah. So
agree.
I am missing 2 bricks right now, which doesn't make any sense at all. That would be very, very rare for that to occur. So I have to check that I didn't throw more stuff down here. There's a chance.
Do you have extra bricks from all your old?
Oh yeah, but this is a specific color which I don't.
Okay.
I think I might have, I don't know, 100,000 bricks, something like that. And every year there's a new color. Yeah, I'm pretty sure something like that. It gets to that very quickly, because these are also 1. So
yes, yeah.
If you have a lot of those, you get to 100,000 very quickly. I've got to go check. So say something interesting, please.
Something interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm running out of interesting things to say. I don't know. Maybe one thing we haven't talked about as far as creativity is coding. I feel like coding has a lot of space for just building from scratch. And if you're missing a Lego piece like that, no big deal, because you can just put it together. And it's kind of like Lego, where you build all these different components. So let's say I want to build this website for backcountry camping. I can start practically from scratch and build up piece by piece, like build up a page which is going to show, for instance, the campsite. So I'm talking about coding in general and using it as creativity. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And so just building up piece by piece and being able to reuse it. And I love it as a medium, because you're not constrained by almost anything these days. There's lots of processing power you can get out there for free. And anything from like coding up a specific calculator I would find useful, or something that would take data from an Excel spreadsheet and parse it way better than I would, save me hours. Or like I said, building up like a web page or some sort of cool gadget from scratch. I just the freedom you can't find even in Lego.
What? What is this sorcery you speak of?
You stepped away for a moment.
Yes, I did. That's for sure. Yeah. And suddenly you went off the rails. What is this? What are you doing? Are you trying to get me demonetized? I'm not monetized. Are you trying to hinder my eventual monetization? What is
Must
this?
Be, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I love coding.
Coding. So what's interesting about coding, Julia?
Oh, you missed the whole spiel, but in general, just being able to build something out of nothing is beautiful. Like I got into coding, I think, in middle school, and it was just a case that it was faster for me to code up a program to do my homework than to actually do my homework. And so right from the get-go, it's like, yeah, I absolutely see the power of this technology, and I will continue using it. And so started there, and as I was mentioning, I used it to automate some jobs I've had to do with spreadsheets way back when. Used it to automate tests when I used to work at BlackBerry. So I'd have something that would test the like light sensor and proximity sensor on a phone, and it would just automatically go down to the right size, turn on the lights, collect the value, come back up, put it all into a graph. And so I just, used to be the case that was someone's job every day, and you write some code and it's just completely automated in a good way, in the sense that those folks could then use their time more productively to do something else.
Yeah. So is that your, I mean, besides you cheating in school, is that your usual sort of
creative problem solving, I'd like to say? Not cheating.
But is that your sort of usual way to approach stuff like this, that if it saves time, it's worth doing? Or
yeah, I'd say so. I think sometimes it's just fun because of how quickly you can prototype something. Once you know how to use some of the building blocks, effectively you're not building something like what you have right there piece by piece. You're like, cool, I already know how to build this wall and this other wall because I've used it in a different project. Copy paste and it's done, and you're flying. So just the repeatability of it and the pure power.
Sorry for going quiet for just a moment, because I think I have found out what it is, why I'm missing a brick. It's because I've used a wrong one, two wrong ones actually. So I found it. These here, these two, one by one, in a sort of tan-ish color, should actually be gold. And these should be elsewhere. Yeah. So I figured it out. Haha. There's a rule in the Lego community that is, if you're missing a brick, you should be looking harder. The chance that it's not in the package is very little. They have quality control that surpasses the shuttle, the space shuttle. So,
oh, really?
Well, that's the saying anyway. But there's a huge amount of quality control within Lego. So if you're missing a brick, you're probably doing something wrong. It's probably inside something, or you missed a step or something like that. So
yeah, it's generally human error.
Yeah, because machines never error. Never error.
Except when humans program them. Yeah.
It is that. So you've been working with AI as well?
Recently, yeah.
Recently. So
I'm no expert, is what I'm trying to communicate.
No, but you can tell us what you find interesting about AI.
So I've spent the last year and a half working at a company teaching artificial intelligence, and so we put our courses on a company called Coursera. Some of you might have heard it because you can learn anything from like algebra to sociology to French, AI. Yeah, it's all on there. And so one of the courses I'm working on right now, it's actually called a specialization when you combine 3 courses together. It's AI for social good, or at this point, I think we're dropping the social because we're also doing environmental good. So but it's always
AI for
AI
good?
for good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right.
And so what we're doing there is we're looking at all the different ways that AI can be applied to, for instance, to track animals. So you might have camera traps set up all around the world. We're looking at a particular data set which was collected in parts of Africa, and you have all these animals come by, and normally the task would just be for someone to look at these images and say animal, no animal, and if it's an animal, okay, what kind is it? I don't know the names of them, they're hard to pronounce, but what type of it is it, and to be able to track and see how their populations change, and if it's the geographies of where they're located change. So it's important information to try to understand at this point, the sad reality that climate change is affecting ecosystems. And so these days you can train algorithms to do this. You don't have to have humans. And so the sheer amount of data you can go through is so much higher, like orders of magnitudes higher than what it used to be. And so I find it fascinating because it does solve real problems like that. Another example is looking at image data, like satellite data, to try to understand whether it's for agriculture, for disaster response, but you have a lot of information within each image. And sometimes the human eye, well, it's definitely faster to use AI, but sometimes it's even more accurate to use AI than hiring a bunch of people to look through data who they're not experts. And so AI is just great for anything where it can learn from existing data. But then the challenge and the difficulty is that if your data is poor, so will the AI.
So will the
model.
AI be?
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard on the news, there's instances of AIs being racist or sexist or atrocious in whichever way. And it's one of those just, if the only data you have to train on is historical data, and historically humans have been like that, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But the extent to which it's powerful is great.
Indeed. And what I think, one thing I find interesting about AI is of course, I'm approaching it from a purely popular perspective. And people will have all kinds of assumptions of what AI can eventually do. But AI for now is, there's a fine line between machine learning and AI at this point, and the precise sort of separation between the two I'm not completely certain of. But one of the things I've sort of, when I've been investigating what AI is and what it can do, is you can train an AI to recognize a bee and the number 3, for instance. It's very good at, and it can get very, very good at that thing. It can separate between those two, a million cycles at a millisecond. It can do that. But when it encounters a picture of a bicycle, it will stop and don't know what to do. Because
if it's only been trained on bees,
it has only been trained, which is where I think the limitation of there's a step, and I don't know what that is because I'm not that technically inclined, but there's a step that needs to happen before AI will be self-learning outside the sort of boundaries we've set for it. So the B's and 3's AI will never learn about how a valve works, for instance. But it can get very good at recognizing B's and 3's.
Yeah, there's that term that some people use, artificial general intelligence, and that's it's being able to do anything a human can do as opposed to a very narrow task. And I think we're far from that. And unless everyone I work with is just far less superior, the amount of difficulty it takes for us to get something simple to work, like within that narrow scope, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot we're still learning. I'm really curious I don't know enough about quantum, but I just understand there are some pretty cool implications that quantum will have on certain parts of AI.
When you say quantum, you mean quantum mechanics?
Quantum, computing.
Yeah.
But I think we're very far from AI being a threat from the perspective of it being sentient in some way. But I think it's really important that we understand the limitations of AI as we apply it to technology. As we should with every technology. But I think AI maybe is being treated as if it's something mystical and difficult to understand. But I think in general, it's not all that complicated.
No, but what was it? I was just about to make a brilliant point. It would have been funny. There would have been laughs. Maybe a bit of an anecdote in there as well. Don't remember it now, but it was. Oh yeah, there was. I saw a program at one point. Don't remember the name. Don't remember the name of the guy either. But there was this scientist guy who said that it's not effective to produce a general, general AI. It's much more effective to produce, hundreds of smaller AIs that can do specific tasks very, very effectively, rather than trying to make one that can do every task.
Not so well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or perfectly, for that matter.
Perfectly. Yeah.
And in that regard, in the whole sort of cost benefit thought, I think we'd never get to a point where sort of a generalized AI is viable in that sense.
Yeah, I think economically everyone's stimulated to use it on their particular application. Yeah, I think we had a rule not to get into politics, but I'm curious how certain nations are advancing their AI capabilities. So maybe that's for a different YouTube channel.
Yeah, maybe it is. But it's an interesting topic, nevertheless. It is very interesting. And interesting that you're working in it. So what do you? Sorry, I'm just trying to do something here. What do you find is the hardest part? You said you've been sort of teaching people, trying to teach people about AI. What do you find is the hardest part to teach people regarding AI?
So I'm teaching myself as I teach people, because I'm no expert. I work with subject matter experts who I'm sort of the expert in teaching, and they come in and they say, hey, okay, I've built this stuff for this many years, or know how to do something with it. I want to say there's honestly nothing really hard about AI. You can go online, you can take a course, or you can pick up a book and learn how to code. And similarly, AI isn't all that mystical. It's actually taking statistical models that have been around for a very long time and just applying them in a slightly different way to produce these results. And these days, there's even like no code solutions. You don't need to know how to code. You could just punch into Google no code artificial intelligence, and you'll have these different approaches to just say, okay, I'm going to build something that's going to take in photos or images, and that would be called traditionally convolutional neural network. And then you will select whatever parameters. You might have to do a little bit of reading, watching some YouTube to learn the details. And then you basically can step in and start applying it to whatever application you have, whether it's cats, whether it's you work in manufacturing and you want to know whether something coming off the line happens to be damaged or if it's properly assembled. These are all things that you can, it's within the realm of, I think, of everyone. And probably if I had to point to one resource, there's a fella I've worked with several times called, his name is Luis Serrano. And so it's Luis Serrano, Serrano, and he has some great videos that approach things from like you have never taken university math or coding, and he explains them really well.
All right, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, nothing complicated really.
Nothing complicated. It's just AI.
Well, no, it's the tech industry loves to make it seem like what it builds and just the core of its existence is something that's out of the reach of the average person. And that's why you need to have some fancy degree or be paid a big salary. And it's like, no, it's really not the case. You're just doing that to exclude people from it and keep people out.
All right. So I'm nearing the end of the things I wanted to build in this stream. You made it far as well. You've made a thing, a beautiful thing. It's very thingy. But I was just my point was to say that that means that we are fairly close to closing down for this stream. Is there anything, Julia, you would like to add? Anything you was thinking? I hope he asks me this question, or I hope we can talk about this, or something like that.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so. So I've emptied out all your knowledge at this point.
All that I think I would bring up here, I think your questions were great. I'm curious if anyone else has specific questions from the audience, or I don't know. I enjoyed actually going out, buying Lego and building it with you today. So I appreciate the prompt to do that.
Very, very, very. Any excuse to buy Lego. any. For me, I don't even need an excuse. I've even somewhat stopped feeling sort of apologetic when I tell people that I am a Lego enthusiast and I use an insane amount of money on Lego still.
Do they know you at the Lego store? They're just like, hey,
unfortunately, there's very far away. The Lego store from where I live.
Okay.
So in that regard, no, unfortunately not. But had I been living closer to it, have I been living in Copenhagen, for instance, where there is a Lego store, I would probably be there much too often and use much more money on Lego because I do really like it. I've actually made a point of trying to source my bricks used, and not only that, I've tried to source it only going to second-hand stores or thrift stores, charity shops and such, which I personally I think is a great idea, of course, but there is some limitations to it, because if you source bricks in that way, usually you find out that people, when they put their Lego in a charity shop, it's a bunch of sets that's been piled together, and actually finding similar bricks, which is something I need when I want to build a building, for instance. I want a lot of one type of brick to make a lot of repetitions to make a bigger building. That's pretty hard to actually find in that way, because it's usually sets which usually doesn't consist of too many of the same bricks. So that's a limitation, a certain limitation. It's not like I don't buy new sets and such, but it's definitely a limitation. So, but it's something I have been doing, and it's fun to go to secondhand stores and try that. I can only recommend it. So
you don't have an automated brick sorter?
I have actually been looking out into designing one. There are some people who made a wonderful sifting system. You have a box with plates in it with holes of decreasing sizes.
Okay,
and when you sort of shake it, they'll tumble down, and the smallest bricks will be on the bottom, and the biggest bricks will be on the top, and you can sort of take the box apart. And you have this. That's the most sort of. That's the most uncomplicated version. I've seen some actually build a brick sorting machine out of Technic Lego, where with some. I think there is something in there that's not Lego, where it will do some kind of. I don't know if it's a photosensitive.
I was going to say Mindstorms can do that.
Mindstorms, for instance, but I'm pretty sure they're using something a bit more powerful computing-wise. That can read and recognize bricks, which can actually sort it. But it is technical Lego that it's built from. It's a fairly slow system. The last one I saw, at least, was a fairly slow system. So I'm pretty sure that you're better off, having the old sift method. But no, I actually don't have any of those. I have been thinking about building one, but I haven't got around to it. I have bought a new house recently, and there's a lot of building I need to do there. So
I've been there. I know that.
It is hard work, and as I say that, I think I'm placing the last brick.
Oh, amazing!
The last piece here. So books or birch books. Of course I put on the signs the wrong way. Of course I have. It'll be fixed in a jiffy. There we go. So done with the first step. Looks like this. Birch books. Wonderful little shop.
Awesome. What's out front there? The yellow and the orange?
That's some leaves. There's a
awesome.
birch tree here in autumn colors. So these are the leaves that's fallen down. So that's what that is. So Julia, it's been a pleasure to have you with us, have you with me, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks for the chat, and great meeting Great meeting the folks that were here.
Yeah, and to everyone else, there's a new video on my channel on Monday as per usual, and I'll hope you see you folks the next time I stream. So for now, bye-bye, and have a great Saturday and Sunday. Bye.